Call the meeting of the Planning Commission to order. Welcome, everybody. There's no notes or announcements ahead of the meeting, so we'll get right to the agenda. Agenda item A is approving the order of agenda. Commissioners, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Moving on to item number B, the minutes of our September 8th meeting. Everybody have a chance to review those.
Make a motion to accept the minutes.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion, or any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to our public hearing items. We have 4 today, so the first one, we'll invite Donald up. Give us an overview.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Donald Kress with the Department of Planning and Development. Item 1 on our agenda this afternoon is the Commerce on 12th, 7th edition. This is located up in the industrial park here, 12th Avenue North, 57th Street North, which eventually becomes Veterans Boulevard if you go farther south enough. The horse park is right off the top of the map here. These are 2 lots here. They're zoned LI, limited industrial. They've been platted for a few years and not yet developed. Again, the zoning here in this entire area is limited industrial. This photograph is about a year or so old. When you see the site photographs, you'll see there's a lot of development all around here. This is being developed, this is being developed, development over here. So there's a rapidly growing area there. We can see here's just 13th Avenue North facing the subject property. These buildings are facing 12th Avenue North. And then looking along the property frontage, here's that building we saw in the aerial photograph. This is in the aerial, but there's building right across the street as well. So it's quite a new area. These 2 lots are side by side, and the applicant proposes to redivide them here in the Commerce on 12th, 7th edition. As you look at this plat, there's a lot of lines on this plat. So we have a slightly easier to understand view here. And so the solid red lines are the lot lines, and then the dashed lines are an easement line. So what we have here is something a little different than we usually do. These 2 lots here touch 13th Avenue North. This is lots 1 and 2. Lots 3 and 4 down here are actually not fronting the street, but they are connected by way of this access easement. We occasionally do this on small industrial projects like this. These lots are very deep, and it's a way to just get some individual lots on this. We work with the applicant to make sure that everyone understands the nature of this. There's actually a note on the plat. If you've looked at the plat, there's actually a note that states that these lots all take their access from this driveway, as well as they take their utilities from that. And the applicant, of course, for his own development, will be preparing a set of covenants and restrictions on this that city staff will take a look at before this plat is finally approved, just to make sure that everything in there makes clear that it is the responsibility of the property owners to maintain this easement and that they understand their obligations to that. Again, otherwise, just a straightforward plat of an industrial lot. The applicant's representative, Tony Uckel of MBN Engineering, is with us this afternoon if you have any questions. Staff's recommendation is stated in your staff report and shown on the screen. That concludes staff's presentation. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Any questions for Donald? Seeing none, does the applicant have anything to add? Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak in favor or against the proposal? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, what are your wishes?
I move to approve with the staff recommendation.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? We'll take the roll, please.
Morgan,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Stoffren,
Aye.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Gunkelman,
Aye.
Schneider.
Aye. The motion passes. Moving on to item number 2, we'll stay with Donald.
Thank you, sir. Item number 2 may look a little familiar to you, Commissioners, here, and it is the Dakota Commerce Center North. And this property, as you see here, is located northwest of the airport. This is I-29. This large building here is the recently constructed Amazon warehouse, city sewage lagoons up here. Your commission looked at this same project in the August 2nd Planning Commission, at which time you recommended approval for the plat, the zone change, and your commission found that the proposed annexation of this area to be consistent with the 2007 growth plan. The applicant continued to work with staff after that and commented that the original proposal was for 4 lots, and he would think of someday reconfiguring it to 7 lots instead. And staff said, well, if you want to do that, you should probably do that now. And so we've been working with the applicant, Paul Hyde, and his team to lay out the site somewhat differently, the plat somewhat differently. It's the same area, but the resulting plat it looks enough different from the original one that it has to come back before your commission to be re-reviewed. So it's the same overall area. You're only looking at the plat. Your recommendation for the zone change and the annexation remain. We don't have to do those again. But again, here the zoning is agricultural at this time. It would be, we'll pick up that zone change when we get to the city commission. It'll be zone limited industrial to match all the properties to the south there. And also that is consistent with the industrial land use designation of the 2007 growth plan. Here are some pictures of, it's a large field. It's a 112-acre field here. You're looking, we're on 37th Street North here, looking northwest across the property. Way out there is the Pepsi soccer complex. Here we're standing on the embankment of the sewage lagoons, looking southwesterly across the property. The big building in the back, of course, is Amazon. And here's a future road dedication here. This is on the east side of the property. These are some small developed industrial lots that face US Highway 81. And then this is turning 45 degrees from that. There's that same sign again, both those. 52nd Avenue North, currently unpaved. It will be developed as part of this project, looking southeasterly across the subject property. To refresh your memory, this is the one you looked at on August 2nd. So we see there were 4 large lots here. These are for, I believe, for warehouse development is the plan. And there were dedicated rights-of-ways all the way around, but there was no internal connectivity. When we got up to the 7 lots, staff determined there needed to be some internal connectivity, probably not a full width 80-foot wide street right away, but there had to be some connectivity. So the revised version, which is before you today, shows 7 lots, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lots. And there are access easements, north-south here and east-west, that are intended to include both a paved road for access as well as a sidewalk, so that there would be both vehicular and pedestrian access within the development. The entitlement before you today also includes a subdivision waiver for block length, as the original one did, because some of these blocks are greater than 1,320 feet. This entire property is a half-mile wide. So that waiver for block length would allow them to have a larger uninterrupted block than we normally would have, for instance, in a residential area. Another difference on this plat is that in the earlier one, only a partial right-of-way was dedicated for 41st Street, with the idea that in the future, the adjacent properties would dedicate right-of-way. On this one, the full width right-of-way, 80 feet, is entirely dedicated on the subject property, on the subject plat. So there's 2 full width right-of-ways here, as much as they can dedicate on the north side because they run into the city property. And then their half, the owner's half, 60 feet of 37th Street North, and the remainder will be, for that right-of-way, will be required in negotiations with the adjacent property owner in the future. So again, you're just looking at a reconfigured plat, 7 lots, now with internal connectivity. The applicant himself, Paul Hyde of Hyde Development, is with us this afternoon. If you have any questions for him or he may wish to comment. Staff's recommendation is stated in your staff report and shown on the screen. Thank you, commissioners. This concludes staff's presentation.
Thanks, Donald. Any questions for staff? Go ahead.
Donald, this plot now with the 7 lots looks like it has, is that on-site water storage that's indicated with the, on, you know, the
Yes, sir. I
lot
don't know if we
3,
can zoom in
6,
there.
and 7?
Yes, sir. I don't know if we can zoom in there, but yeah. So these show as, these dash lines here show as drainage easements. There's a square here and a rectangle here. their draft site plan shows these as individual ponds here, one here and then one here.
Okay,
And those will be, the applicant's engineer will work with our engineering department to size those appropriately. That's just a large area that's staked out for the development of those ponds on the plat.
Any other questions for Donald? Seeing none, does the applicant wish to speak? Please introduce yourself for the record.
Hi, I'm Paul Hyde of Hyde Development. Just want to give you a little context. As Don mentioned, we'd been working on this probably almost all of this year. And as we continued our market studies, it became clear to us that we needed to have some more flexibility for little smaller buildings. So the 4-building plan turned into a 7-building plan, and that's why we're back here with this revised plat. Happy to answer any other questions. Our first 2 buildings, just south of Amazon, our first one's done and full with Marvin. Second one's under construction, should be delivered December 1st. And our next 2 buildings will wrap up over 2023 and 24. Then we'll jump across the Amazon building and keep going with this particular parcel. Thank you.
Thanks for the additional details. Any questions for the applicant?
I'd like to ask a question. How do the ponds that are existing at this point, apparently they can grow, is that right? Or get larger? And how does that impact the development on this parcel or these parcels?
Great question. There are no existing stormwater ponds. Stormwater just flows as it is on the farm site today. We have to create stormwater to both treat and retain the water on the site. We spent a good deal of time with engineering, who's really good at this, in order to figure out how big the ponds had to be and where they had to go to make the stormwater work. And that's what's shown on the plat in front of you.
Any other questions for the applicant?
I'd like to also ask where does the stormwater come from, actually?
Rain or snow melt,
Just the 2 of them. It's not any
the heavens.
water
Maybe-
passing through the property.
Maybe we could ask Tom, who's with us from the engineering department, just to give us a brief overview on stormwater retention, I guess.
Yeah, again, what they will have to manage on their site as they develop is any rainwater runoff that has to be managed on their site. Like Paul talked about, we manage the release rates of that going into our stormwater system. Ultimately, from this area, it'll flow east and go into the drain.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So where does the drain come in then? Does the drain go into the river?
That's correct. In this location, again, the stormwater would flow to the east to the drain, which then flows to the north to the Red River.
Okay. I still haven't been able to figure out where the diversion comes in up there.
The alignment of the diversion up in this area is still several miles further north of this.
How far?
I don't know exactly. I want to say it's probably around 4 or 5 miles at this location.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience here to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing.
Commissioner, if I just may
Yeah,
add
go
a
ahead.
note for the commission's reference here. So, as we said, in August, you recommended approval for the planning, for the zone change and for the annexation. If you recommend approval for the plat here this afternoon, then staff will work to get these all to come together at a city commission meeting, probably in early November, so that the plat, the zone change, and the annexation all work together.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Commissioners, what are your wishes?
Move approval, staff recommendations.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second? Motion and second. Any discussion? Seeing none, please take the roll.
Dunkelman,
Aye.
Stoffren,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Schneider.
Aye. The motion passes. Moving
Thank you,
on to
Commissioners.
item number 3, we'll invite Megan up.
Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. Item 3 is the Chaz A. Roberts edition, which is an application for a zoning change. Subject property is located at 700 and 701 7th Street South, 555 and 563 8th Avenue South, and 800 6th Street South. This application is a zone change to change from SR2 single dwelling residential, LC limited commercial with a CO conditional overlay, and PI public and institutional to PI and public and institutional, and to repeal the existing conditional overlay. Legal description for the application are parts of blocks G, H, T, and I of the Chaz A. Roberts addition, and parts of vacated 6th Street South, and parts of vacated 8th Avenue and 9th Avenue South. So up here you can see on the map, Island Park here is just to the north, so we're just a little bit from where we are right now in downtown Fargo. On the screen, you can see there are 5 properties included with this zone change. On the north side, we have Dill Hill, which is the Fargo Park District's property, and the remainder 4 are owned by the Fargo School District, both of which representatives are here today. On the map, you can just see the zoning here. The hatch in your packet was a little bit different than you normally see. That just indicates that there are historic overlays just directly adjacent to the subject property. On the screen, you can see view from 5th Avenue South, looking at Dill Hill and into the office building that the school district owns. And then the image on the south side is 8th Avenue South, looking towards, on the left, the office building, and then on the right, the school. The application today, the Fargo School District is looking to expand the district's early childhood special education program on the north side of the Hawthorne School. Because of this expansion, they're doing a little bit of housekeeping or cleaning up kind of in the area, cleaning up the zoning, rezoning it to a more appropriate zoning district, which is PI, public and institutional. The repeal of the conditional overlay includes, the current conditional overlay includes some specifics to setbacks, driveway location and land use requirements, but they are requesting to repeal it. Per the Land Development Code, public and institutional is a zoning district that is intended to accommodate governmental, civic, public service, or quasi-public the uses in nature. And so to rezone this to PI provides some more protections for the neighborhood. If it was sold or developed privately, it would have to be rezoned again. The school district, we're not aware of any other plans for expansion of the school district other than what I just described on the north side. Prior to the planning department receiving applications, the school district's development team had reached out to the neighborhood association, Hawthorne Neighborhood Association, and had at least one meeting with them. As part of our application process, notification letters were sent out. We've received 6 inquiries, 5 at the time of the publication of the packet, and 1 since publication who I've not been able to get in touch with directly. But with those who I've spoken with, there was no noted concern on the application. As well as we also reached out to, the planning staff reached out to the president of the Hawthorne Neighborhood Association to communicate the applications as well. Up on your screen, I'll show and talk about this a little bit more in the next application, which is on most of the same property or the subject property that you've seen as part of this application. Dill Hill is to the north here, the current office building, and this would be the proposed expansion, which has kind of prompted some of these applications before your board today. That concludes staff's findings. Staff finds that all criteria are met and are recommending approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thanks. Any questions for Megan? Seeing none, is the applicant here and wishes to add anything? Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak on this item? Yeah, please come up to the podium and introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. My name is Dan Gilroy. I'm a neighbor of this particular proposal living on 6th Avenue South. I was a little confused by the letter that I received because Megan and I spoke briefly about it when I arrived, but I couldn't determine where the arrow was pointing on the copy that I had originally. So I really have just a quick question, if I can, or a couple of questions. When I looked at the picture that you showed earlier of 5th Avenue, if you can go back to that. Yes, that picture. Now, where you see that building, current school district headquarters, if you look to the left of that, there's really no space to build in that immediate area to the left. And I was just wondering if that area they were looking to build on that when you talked about expansion of their school. So there's two areas that I think you mentioned to me. One is the parking lot, which is the smallest square you see on that. And that's across the street to the west of the school district building. So I'm trying to figure out where the school district would be planning on potentially expanding since they don't have a plan now, if I understand that.
Megan, maybe I think it's the next slide, right? That slide?
That one, yeah,
Yeah,
right there.
go ahead.
Yeah,
Yep.
so, go ahead.
Oh, thank you for your question. Up here, so here's the little parking lot, yep. And then this area is north of the school on the school district's property of where they're hoping to expand. It does not go into Dill Hill. If you can see my cursor, this would be the extent of the property line on the north side.
Okay.
So it would stay on the school district's property on just directly north of the school. And it's pretty hard to see in this image back
Right, okay.
over here.
Thank you for that clarification. I'm being new to Fargo and I hear the words Dill Hill. It kind of seems to encompass a pretty broad area. And I just wanted to make sure I knew what specifically that was. And that applies to the school, that particular site behind the school district office and the spot across the street from it, which is the parking lot.
So Dill, up
Yep.
on your map here, yep, this is Dill Hill right here.
Right, yep,
Yep, and then this parking lot is owned by the school district. And
Okay.
they have no plans to do any kind of construction or expansion on the parking lot property at
right.
this time.
So the school property basically abuts, it's not a big footprint, but it goes to basically the top of the sidewalk that goes down to Island Park.
So that would be, if you can see my cursor up on the screen, this is the area of where they would expand.
It's a small green space at the top of the hill.
Yes, okay,
Yep,
great.
at the top.
That clarifies my questions. I'm sorry if I should have had this answered before I showed up here today.
That's okay, we had some time, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. 30-plus years ago, we called that our recess area, but, sorry.
That's where the toboggan slide used to be.
Yeah, there you
That's
go.
right.
I just wanted to make a comment, and that is that I'm real pleased that the school district has decided to invest in early childhood education in this area. It'll stabilize the neighborhood and those neighborhoods around it. I'm just wondering about the scope. This doesn't have to do with the approval, but I'm wondering about the scope in terms of the early childhood education. Do you know who it's going to serve? Will it be just the Hawthorne neighborhood or others?
I believe that's district-wide, but I would probably hand that over to
We did.
Jackie Gapp with the Fargo School District.
Yeah, we did close the public hearing, but if it's not on this item, I don't really want to open up the public hearing again.
All right, I'm just generally interested in that.
Maybe you can talk after.
It's because of the fact that I'm being congratulatory in helping to stabilize the neighborhoods by keeping kids in the neighborhood.
Yeah, I think we'll wait. If it's not pertaining to the item, we had the chance to invite them up.
Bring it up on the next one.
Any other, yeah. They come up on the next item, maybe it's appropriate. Any other questions for discussion? Or,
Well, one quick question, even though, because we've got the preliminary site plan as submittal with this item, or actually it might pertain more to item 4, was where they're putting parking. So is that this item or next item?
Yep, so in item 4, one of the items is a request for, to address parking on the site. So I'll talk a little bit more about that with item 4.
Okay, on item 4, okay. Hold that question.
so this is just the rezoning.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve staff findings.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take the roll.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
Stoffren,
Aye.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Dunkelman,
Aye.
Schneider.
Aye, the motion passes. Item 4, Megan?
All right, items 4A and 4B are titled Hawthorne Elementary Edition and the Chaz A. Roberts Edition. So application here is for 700 and 701 7th Street South, 555 8th Avenue South, and 800 6th Street South, parts of Block G, H, T, and I of Chaz A. Roberts Edition. parts of the vacated 6th Street South and 8th Avenue South and 9th Avenue South, as well as a Hawthorne Elementary addition. The application before you today is for 2 parts. Minor subdivision that would replat 3 properties into 1, as well as a conditional use permit for a parking reduction based on the school expansion. So as I noted, the Hawthorne School District is planning to expand. And actually, before I jump, I'll note here. So up on your screen, this application does not include Dill Hill. We're just only talking about the Fargo School District's property here. On the lower left, you'll see the area of the plat. So the plat application includes 3 properties, which are identified here, which are the 3 contiguous school district properties. Right now, 3 properties being replatted into 1. And then just over to the right, you'll see 4, which includes a parking lot to the west, included in the conditional use permit for the alternative access plan for parking reduction. So these are just a couple of different images looking at the property. And then the one on the bottom will show you what the parking lot on the west side of 7th Street South looks like. You did see this with the last application, but just to talk in a little bit more detail, the applicant is requesting to apply for a parking reduction for an alternative access plan, which would essentially keep the parking that is there existing today with this expansion. With the expansion, I'm going to jump really quickly here to an aerial image. You'll see there are, it's very difficult to see where the line is, but there's about 12 spaces in the northeast corner, the parking lot, that would go away as part of the parking with the school expansion. And what the request before you today is to, without those 12 spaces, keep the remaining spaces on site and to not construct any more parking spaces on site. As part of this application, we did receive a parking study that talked about the logistics of parking, how the school district uses the office building and when, and the available parking that they had. That was reviewed by the City Engineering Department's traffic engineer, who concurred with the findings. So what their request is today would be to provide 171 parking spaces, which are the amount of parking spaces there today, less those 12 I mentioned would go away, to keep that parking there with the expansion. And there are conditions that I'll go over a little bit later to kind of limit beyond the scope and limit to kind of what's there today, or what we're talking about today. And then up on your screen is what the line work is a little bit hard to see, what the plat looks like. As I mentioned, they're consolidating the 3 properties today, which here you can see there's quite a number of legal lots, but they're replatting into 1 property. So it would be 1 lot, 1 block subdivision here, just to have all their property on one site. So the bullet points up on your screen, and I guess before I jump to that, I'll just note, similarly with the last application, we sent out the same property owner notifications, though different letters, different items, but went through kind of the similar process as I mentioned. The design team for the school district reached out to the neighborhood ahead of the department receiving these applications, spoke with the Hawthorne Neighborhood Association. Property owner letters were sent to property owners within 300 feet. We received 5 inquiries at the time of publication of the staff report, and 1 subsequent that I haven't been able to connect with. No noted concern here, and we also sent these letters directly to the Hawthorne Neighborhood Association. So up on your screen is staff's recommendation, including the 4 bullet items. Often your commission sees conditions from staff when it comes to parking reductions. Here our bullets are requested conditions be that 171 parking spaces are provided on site, that the parking requirements can be met anywhere within the properties included in the conditional use permit, which were the 4 that I mentioned, that expansion of office and or school use will require a reevaluation of the off-street parking requirements, and that the conditional use permit will cease if any property included in the conditional use permit is no longer owned by a government, civic, or public entity. Staff finds all criteria is met and is recommending approval. Be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Megan. I had one question for you. On the far west side of the parking lot across the street, is there any sort of buffer between the residential properties and the parking lot?
That's a good question. According to the site plan, I don't think so. I do believe there is a sliver of right-of-way and potentially kind of some remnants of alley, but as far as on their property, it does not look like there's sufficient space. If this was being developed today, we would require some additional space and some plantings and things like that. This parking lot has been there for a couple decades or even before that. And so they're kind of allowed to operate as they are today. If they start kind of making changes to that site, we would likely apply, you know, all the current requirements of the code today if it came to, permit review.
Yeah, I worry about, you know, I know there was a property just to the south end of the L here or whatever that was torn down that we used as a parking lot for the building kitty corner that we required some parking buffer on when they put a parking lot there. And I just thought, you know, they are coming to ask for a reduction in parking, and so it is new in a way too. If they're looking at a parking plan, it would be nice to have a residential buffer. I don't know if there's any way to put something there.
There's almost an alley there that goes down to at least the second house, if I'm not mistaken.
Because there's no way we would let the parking lot go all the way to a residential home now for a business. And so,
Yeah, and thank you for that question. I think I know the property that you're talking about, and that was new development of a parking lot. And so those kinds of things would apply. For example, if they were, you know, totally reconstructing this parking lot, or if they were removing houses to build this parking lot, we would have residential protection standards that would apply here that would require the parking lot to be 10 feet off the property line, or to have, you know, residential protection buffer, or, you know, some of those things. But since it's there today and it's going to be operating in the same way, we wouldn't have those same requirements unless, I guess, your commission wanted to discuss that in more detail.
is it staff's opinion that there's not sufficient room to do something?
There is stuff there. Right there, all the way along it.
Does that go all the way?
Well, a good chunk of it.
Okay. And maybe there is something, that's a question, but it seems like we should require something if we can.
I believe there is an alleyway and that there's space there. I don't think the alley goes all the way to the north, and unfortunately we can't.
If you go
Can't
back
wait.
to the one picture where you can see the blue house on the other side of the parking lot, it didn't look like there was something, and so that's what spurred the question.
And the
Yeah,
third
you can
house
see.
in there has a garage that butts up against the back.
Yeah.
I don't know how closely you can see here, but there is some spacing where there is right of way or like an alleyway in between here and the property, so it isn't specifically, you know, butt up to the backyards or whatnot.
And I realize it's an existing parking lot, but they are building a new commercial structure or a new institutional structure that requires parking, so it seems within our authority to require a buffer, and we would in any other situation. So, but I don't know if nobody else has thoughts on it. I'm not gonna push it, but. Any other questions for Megan?
I'd like to ask, in your parking study, what was the outcome? I know that there had been an insurance company there previously, and then the Park District bought the building, and now with this addition, do you have a comparison between the three uses of the parking spaces?
Staff hasn't done an evaluation between those different uses. The parking provided, they did quite a bit of tallies throughout the day or throughout different weeks to see what capacity the parking lot had, you know, what their capacity of their office building was, and how, you know, the operations of the school were working. You know, I believe that the building is kind of at the capacity, at the amount of people that are going to be using that office space. And so all of that was taken into account when they did their parking study. And their parking study did show that based on, you know, the capacity of the people working at the office building, the school district, and the new program that they're bringing, they have sufficient parking. Parking is met for what is required based on kind of the logistics and operations for those uses on site.
I see, just out of interest with early childhood education regarding parking, is there, I suppose there would be parking for staff, but is there like parking for parents to come pick up children, drop them off, that sort of thing?
I believe that the operations and logistics of the type of, you know, the program was taken into consideration. Generally speaking, with these types of studies that happen, there's coordination, you know, with the user, with the park district to talk about the logistics of the functions and the needs of the school district.
So how does the park district come into play?
This is not on the Park District property, so
No,
this is,
oh, I'm sorry.
yep, this is solely just the school district's
Yeah, I
property.
thought you said park district.
Oh, I meant to say the school
Yeah,
district.
okay,
Yep,
all right,
sorry about
good.
that.
Any other questions for staff?
I have one, Ron.
Go ahead.
Is it possible, Nicole, that we could get, when we do these parking studies, that we can get a copy of those in our packets? I mean, it'd be nice to be able to see this information before we do this, so we know what's going on
Yep.
as a commission.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you'd like moving forward, we generally haven't put them in the packet, but kind of relayed some of that information. And it also does get reviewed by our traffic engineer has that expertise and provides that expertise for the city, but we sure can.
Yeah, basically, in terms of the parking, yeah, we can certainly do that, Commissioner Rosenberg, and basically that authority on the parking analysis in terms of the land development code defers to the traffic engineer, and it's his approval that lets us meet the criteria to make the application to you.
I just think it'd be nice for us to understand why we should approve a parking variance like this based on that study and analysis that makes sense. Because I see in this, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I see also that in that there's a future parking spot that's been identified for expansion. And so, you know, obviously that if something were to happen, they have at least identified some additional parking and to move forward with it. So I think that's going to be helpful because I am concerned about the number of stalls and with the traffic flow and everything that, you know, and when you put parking on the other side of the street, it's the last place people park. I mean, they park as close as they can to the office, and if that affects the school and pickups or drop-offs or teachers trying to park over there, it'd be really bad. I mean, it wouldn't be great for the people that are working at the Hawthorne School to have to park over in this parking lot when the administrative people should be parking over there. And then, you know, to do that because there's, you know, there's time, you know, there's process through that. So that's my only concern.
Yeah, and thank you, Commissioner, for pointing out. There is, if you weren't able to see it, there is kind of a designated area. And so that's one of the things the applicant told us is that at this time, we believe that the parking is sufficient, but in the future, if it's not, we have an identified location where we can build more parking, so.
That's good.
Also, I'd like to ask, in that traffic study, whether the traffic has been assessed in terms of where most of the traffic will be coming from. I assume it's 7th Street, 8th Street. We're on 8th Avenue here. It seems like, well, there's nowhere for the traffic to go except south there. On what street is that? 8th Street? 6th? Okay, so what's going to happen with that traffic congestion just on the south side of the school district? Their original site or their current site there?
Maybe if I could suggest, I don't know, Tom, if you want to talk about what a traffic engineer reviews as part of an analysis in general, I don't know if Commissioner Chair, if you'd like that detail.
You know, yeah, maybe just a high level, but I mean, I do agree that if we're asking for a traffic variance, it makes sense to send it out ahead of time, just to avoid this too, but it'd be helpful, Tom, if you could give us an overview maybe.
Maybe we could do it on one of our education pieces.
Yeah,
Why don't we do it then?
Well, that's what I was going to suggest too, Commissioner Rosenberg, is maybe it's, what we can do is send you the criteria that we look at as part of the land development code. There's a very strict evaluation criteria we look at as part of the land development code that's under, that the ordinance governs, and then takes that and applies it to the authority of the city engineer. And so we could either do an education session to review that as a whole, and it might be good training for our consulting engineers at the same time. And provide, do like a brown bag or a noontime kind of review or something like that.
Yeah, I would agree. That would probably be better than me trying to answer that question on the fly today. Again, Jeremy Gordon, our transportation engineer, would be the expert on that. Excuse me. when looking at a site like this, he's certainly going to be cognizant of how the operations of a facility, whether existing or expanded, is going to impact our infrastructure, our network, right? So what I would just say is if he reviewed the traffic study that was done for this, the parking study that was done for this, and is comfortable with that, I would certainly be as well.
Okay, thank you. Maybe we could ask the applicant up. I just had, if you could come up, if you're still able to come up now. Maybe one thing you could just say, how many additional staff are you proposing to have in the expansion area that would really change the traffic level from what it's at today?
Yeah, thank you, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Jackie Gapp. I'm the business manager for Fargo Public Schools. Just a brief background with the addition that we're working on, and even in regards to traffic flow, these are 3 to 5-year-old special needs students. So it is preschool programming, and many, if not the majority of these students will be arriving via bus transportation. So that is something we considered as well with the traffic flow. We anticipate the school still flowing the same, and the addition, the majority will be bus transportation. So it will really, eliminate a little bit of the parent comings and goings and drop off. With the additional classrooms and support staff in that area, I'm going to anticipate about 20 new staff that will be relocated in that building. And just as another brief background, a few years ago, we did a study with our stakeholders who were seeking to have a north, middle, and south side program for our early childhood. This would be the middle of the city programming, and so would be bringing students from those areas of the district until we have the opportunity to put something further south. So I hope I answered your questions, and if you have any more, I'd be happy to assist.
Appreciate that. I appreciate the overview. It sounds like a great project. Any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. Anyone else from the audience? Yes, please come up to the podium again and ask you to introduce yourself again, just for the record.
My name is Dan Gilroy, live at 434 6th Avenue South. My wife and I walk by this, we walk the neighborhood quite extensively. We walk by the school almost every day. If I'm looking at that same map there, I think you should be aware, because I think many of you are asking very good questions about this parking situation. The upper right-hand part there, which would be designated, from what I understand, for the actual early childhood care facility. If you go 1 block from there, you're on 4th, 1 block to the east. So that would be one major road that could bring traffic into the area. My sense is that when we walk, that we see teachers now parking on 5th and on the side streets, because it is closer for them to come into the school than come around and come in the main entrance, which is on the curve that you see on pretty much on the middle of that particular slide. So I think one of you hit on the question of how far do you have to walk and how far do people have to walk to get into their particular building. As it relates to the parking lot on the left, across the street, I can tell you that there's a condominium building to the north of that parking lot. And there would not be any space for expansion that direction. I'm not sure what a legal, quote, buffer is, but I don't think you have a lot of buffer space there. On the south side of that parking lot, to the left, or to the west side, there is an alley, and I know for a fact it serves one house, which is the corner house there. I can't tell you off the top of my head if it goes further than the one house. So I know that there are students that are dropped off on the curve and they walk into the school, and that's a pretty good walk. And days like today, when you can wear shorts because it's so nice out, it's not a bad deal, but I don't know what it's gonna be like in the middle of a blizzard. So I think you're wise to be not only looking at the facilities and the parking, but also to be looking what the impact of the parking is as you go to the east on the cross streets. I personally would observe that there's less parking needed today than there was when the building was owned by RDO. I think RDO filled up that parking lot pretty good. And of course, that changed when everyone started working remotely. But that parking lot was pretty much full. So I think you would find, and the parking lot is not as full now, but I don't know if that's because of the summer or whatever, when it was going on. But I wanted to tell you, I think you're asking some good questions here that could help you make your decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your comments. And yeah, I had the same thought without on the northeast corner with those 12 parking spots removed. I imagine the Hawthorne School is going to kind of reorientate what's the staff entrance type thing as opposed to that door, maybe using the main door more so just to kind of orient traffic toward the parking lots versus the opposite side. So I thought it was good because it'd move it out of the 4th Street corridor. Anybody else in the audience wish to speak on this matter? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, what are your wishes?
I'll make the motion to accept the findings and recommendations of staff as presented in our packet.
Second.
With motion and second, any discussion? I'll just encourage the school district to pay attention to buffer space if they do remodel the parking lot. All right, seeing no other, please take the roll.
Stoffren,
Aye.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
Gunkelman,
Aye.
Schneider.
Aye. The motion passes. That is everything on the agenda. Staff, anything additional? Seeing none, we'll adjourn.
I was just going to let you know quick that we do have the RFP. Thanks for your involvement last month in the informational brown bag joint meeting with City Commission. We do have the RFP for the growth plan live out on the street. And submittals will be are due back November 4th. So we'll keep you posted as that progresses.
Thank you. Motion is adjourned, or
Move.
meeting is adjourned.